Dun dun dun, dun dun dun, dun dun dun, dun dun dun. See them walking hand in hand across the bridge at midnight. Bum bum bum. Heads turning as a light flashing out is so bright. Dun dun dun. Then walk right to the forward track as she came rolling on her back. On her back. And I sense a rhythm humming in a frenzy all the way down her spine. Dun dun. Bum 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 boom bum 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 bum. Girls on film. Girls on film. Bum 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 bum. Girls on film. Boom 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 boom. Girls on film. Bum. Dun dun dun. Dun dun dun. Dun dun dun, dun dun dun. Lipstick cherry all over the lens as she's bawling.
She wonders how she ever got here as she goes under again. Goes on.
Sharp blue water coming in when she lies. Bum 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 bum. The driving man's come out for her air because the crowd are pulling and darling her hair by her hair. And she wonders how she ever got here and she goes under again. Dun bum 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 bum. Girls on film. 2 minutes later, girls on film. Boom, 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 boom. Girls on film. Mojo picture. Girls on film. Dun 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 dun. Brighter babies bright and made a million. Dun 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 dun. Fuse dick pumping and feet out on a wire. Bum bum bum. Take one last glimpse into the night. I'm touching close and holding tight. Holding tight. Give me shudders in a whisper. Take me up till I'm shooting star. Dun dun bum bum bum. Girls on film. She's more than a lady. Girls on film. Girls on film. 2 minutes
Hello.
later.
My name is Kelson. My name is Dr. Ian Kelson. So far it's been about 28 months since infection began, and I found a camcorder to document my experience of infection so far. So 28 years later. 28 years later is without a doubt my favourite movie obsession so far, closely followed by Avatar 2009 and Fight Club. I wanted to come out here and talk about what I think my predictions are for 28 years.
Pepsi.
The Fresh Maker. Do you have any Tango?
Actually, I did have a can of Tango somewhere. Quiet! That's an infected.
So, let's start with 28 days later. 28 days later, the reason why it's my favourite film is because it combines like the traditional zombie apocalypse narrative, but it's also just a genuinely enjoyable movie. It's sprinkled with a lot of humorous moments. The military being a villain is a big trope in a lot of modern zombie fiction, but the thing is that it does it so well to convince you that even just 1 month after the apocalypse, people have already gone, Bowser. Probably my favorite moment of the entire film is probably the raid on the mansion after, a emotional moment where Hannah says that she wants to bury her dad. A zombie steps on a landmine, and then they have a pretty intense fight on the lawn of the mansion. It really makes me want to play 7 Days to Die. I just wanted to talk about 28 Days Later. So 28 Days Later is good, but it is a dated film. It's a dated film in the fact that it's kind of rough and edgy, and I think I like the edge. At moments it's a little, you can definitely the Hannah's acting at the very beginning is a little bit stiff and wooden, but when like she actually needs to emote in the mansion, that's where Hannah's performance shines, and especially when Frank starts turning.
We need each other. And we'll never be safe in the cities. The soldiers
yeah,
will keep us safe.
So the things that I just want to, and also in the moment where Frank gets infected, you can actually see him getting. You can actually see a camera person sitting there and just filming there. I thought that was kind of nice. It doesn't really matter. Also, the I hate you part, people generally know it's a gaff. It wasn't supposed to be there, but I actually think it kind of works. I think the zombies saying I hate you, it works, generally speaking. Oh yeah, by the way, if you want to skip straight to my predictions for 28 Years Later, Jimmy's Rage or whatever, just go to this time and I'll put through. But if you can't stomach watching me recap the whole series, then go watch Mr. Beast or something. I actually can't get enough of Cillian Murphy's performance in 28 Days Later. I think it's probably my favourite thing that he's done, but also just in general, I really, really like what 28 Days Later is. Just probably, in my opinion, probably one of the best zombie films out there. So yeah, definitely believe in it. If you haven't seen it already, it's probably extremely cheap. Don't buy. I'm pretty sure the success of the relevance of 28 Years Later franchise brought the price of 28 Days Later up. So if you're ever gonna get it, watch it on YouTube via someone reacting to it. I do it all the time. But also just get it at a good price, I think. What more is there to say about 28 Days Later? So I'm just going to divulge some, just some observations I have about the story. First things first, I definitely believe that the priest zombie at the very beginning is definitely trying to communicate with Jim that you should go. The arm motion sure could be involuntary muscle spasms, but I also think that it's like genuine attempts to tell Jim to go, get away from me, trying to give him some kind of warning system, which makes me think that the infected are still in there fighting, and that's terrifying. The church scene as well, I think actually that might be my favourite scene, the where Jim goes into this church and there are bodies, the music sting, and also those two infected. I don't know what it is about the fact that they're infected, but you don't see any blood or stuff, and this guy's already like, hello? This guy is wearing a bib, and this guy is doing the YouTuber react face. There's something so incredibly terrifying about these two infected specifically, and I can't really put my finger on it, but whenever I go onto a video of that scene, that is the most replayed one, and also people in the comment section of a react video definitely mention that scene as being particularly, noticeable. The sun is burning my back. Another thing is that after, it's taken me this long to get with the times and accept this fact, but I definitely think that the military people, so when I see people react to the scene of Frank turning into a zombie and the military so conveniently showing up to save Selena and Hannah and Jim from Frank turning into a rage zombie, But I definitely think that the military were definitely there. You could see one of them up climbing on some scaffolding. They knew that they were there. And those rushes of like bodies moving just beyond the camera lens, that was definitely them. So it's not like they weren't there. It's just I think that the military, quote unquote military, were waiting for Frank to do something or to go away, because they wouldn't have been able to assault Hannah and Selena with Frank there. Frank would absolutely be able to pick up on the fact that those lads were not to be trusted. And I'm pretty impressed by certain people who react to 28 Days Later, that they're able to also pick up that the military guys are not to be trusted, even though the movie does every attempt to lure you into a false sense of security by making Jones so happy and playful, stirring those rotten eggs, or Henry Major West, Major Henry West, and showing off the landmines that they have planted on the floor. So they either strung an entire infected body up high, kind of like Jimmy and the gang did, to infected victims. But also I think it's just a case of I don't know whether or not they planted that infected there hanging as a booby trap. I mean, it's possible, but Frank definitely kicked it, and that's what made the crow was startled, and that's what made blood fall from it, and that's what caused his infection. But whether that body was there or not, the army guys definitely were internally celebrating the fact that Frank was the one who got turned, and it wasn't Selena or Hannah, because Frank would have absolutely not. Well, he would have gave his life to protect Hannah from the lads. I don't even know if I should be calling them the lads. That kind of gives them a little bit of respect when they absolutely are awful human beings. So next thing I want to say about the soldiers is, I know I've been kind of thinking about this for a while, but half of those guys are definitely not soldiers. I mean, I think Major Henry West is a soldier. I believe Sergeant Farrell is a soldier, and maybe some others like Bill or whatever. But I seriously doubt that Jones or Mitchell or Clifton or maybe even Davis is a soldier, because they just strike me as so sloppy, so uncoordinated, so onto themselves. They know basic military like lingo and stuff like that, but they just strike me as a bunch of like football lads who managed to survive the initial purge. They found the blockade. Henry wanted to build like an army, so he said, you can live in this mansion and enjoy protection if you are inducted into my little one-man show. And it worked. And I think that Mitch having the stripes on his jersey indicates that he was probably given some sort of rapid promotion, because he is very brash, he's very violent. He probably would have had a mutiny if he, was denigrated. So I think it was a strategic move on Major Henry West's point to give him like a faux sergeant position, so that he would, not kill them, so that he would feel like he is in kind of control, but he's progressing, and that's what gives him this really cocky attitude. So I think half of the guys, not soldiers at all. As I said before, I think some of them are, but I definitely don't believe all of them are. They probably found some extra supplies. All their clothing is very mismatched. Clifton is wearing this hood. I thought it was like the hood from their gas mask, but it's not. It's like one of those sheepskin Soviet style things. Their jumpers look like they came from an army surplus store, kind of like Gorka fashion, where it's like the Soviet army used like Gorka mountain wear stuff to like supplement their armies. And I kind of like the style. It's very rugged and DIY, but it kind of, I think that was trying to communicate to us at least that a lot of the guys like Jones or whatever weren't soldiers, especially when Jones was like, Mitch, I fucking got one. You know, it's like he's been practicing with a gun, but he's never actually killed an infected himself.
What do you want, a fucking sweetie? Keep showing that cunt.
Overall, 28 days later is great. I think there's no point where I actually skip the movie. The only moment that I do kind of skip is the tunnel scene when they're changing the tire. Just because I'm just impatient, you know. And also the moment when Jim eats with his mouth open, I definitely tap 10 seconds up, you know. I don't know what it is about the low quality camera making this food very unidentifiable and gross looking, especially when Jim is eating with his mouth open, but that's the moment that I skip. Talk about the zombie-sized hole in the room. Let's talk about the elephant in the room. Let's talk about 28 weeks later. 28 weeks later, it's definitely grown on me a bit more than it's definitely grown on me than it did when I first saw it, but I don't think it holds a candle. I think 28 weeks later in the order of the 4 films so far is definitely my least favorite. It's obviously much higher quality, but the thing is they've got Hollywood actors, they've got Hollywood level budgets, and also a different director. Danny Boyle did not direct 28 Weeks Later. He directed the opening scene, which is probably more iconic for the series than anything really. I don't think even the moments when Jim is on the London Bridge in his hospital overalls is anywhere near as famous of a movie scene than Don and his wife are in 28 Weeks Later. I've got some things to say about Don and his wife. So, my official stance is that Don did nothing wrong. Come at me. I think, and a lot of other people think, and a lot of other people agree with me, that Don deciding to leave his wife in the chaos of the infected house, I think was totally justified. I think it's incredibly unfair to say that Don is a terrible husband because he had to abandon his wife, but let's just look at the facts before we cast any judgment. Number one is that they let in this kid that was definitely the fall of them. They were safe, they were laying low. Now, would I help a kid in danger? Absolutely I would. But the thing is that he wasn't just being chased by a few infected. He was chased by many. By the time Don got out the house and was running towards the boat, there was like 50 of them running across the hills and down the house. He would have been fucked. Not to mention the infected still in the house. There was like a bunch of them, and also the now infected people in the house. So, yeah, Don's wife could have gotten away with him. They could have barricaded themselves in. The infected could have, hammered it, and then maybe they would have been distracted by the kid. But the thing is that Don's wife decided nobly to save the kid, or at least not save them, but say you're not gonna die alone. And Don was separated. Don's wife was screaming at him not to go and be with her children and say, keep me alive in your memories. Her stance was, Don, you should come help me. And Don, I think, made the smart choice by abandoning them in the house. Because if Don didn't do that, if Don went to go save his wife, guess what? They'd both be dead and their kids would be orphans. I think that if their family are now orphans, then what happens next is that the children are probably land in the UK from their holiday in France or Spain or whatever. I can't remember where they went, but they went on a holiday trip. They probably would have landed on the Isle of Dogs, and then the UN forces will be like, well, they don't have any parents, so away they go again. They probably stay on the tarmac, and they probably sleep in the airport, and then they go. Or they're put in a section house with not nearly as much luxury as they are. They got a detached apartment because Don is the general administrator of the Isle of Dogs. He keeps the lights on, he keeps the water running, and that affords him perks like high security clearance, which goes into probably the biggest critique of 28 Weeks Later, is that there is no security presence guarding Don's wife. Now, Alice, if there was if discovered that heterochromia, the thing that makes your eyes a different color, caused you to become immune to the infected, I think it would not only shake the entire Isle of Dogs base, but also the entire world, because it would mean that this dangerous infection not only maybe potentially could be cured, but also is that this person wasn't immune, she was an asymptomatic carrier of the disease. That means she is a ticking time bomb. Every single drop of blood, every single cell, every single ounce of saliva, or even drop of saliva, contained enough virus to turn you into a rabid monster within seconds. And if that was the case, then you're just fucked. One more observation before I move on to 28 years later is that it's widely recognized that Don was the first alpha zombie. He had tactics. He would not immediately charge the group, he would instead stalk them like a predator. Kind of like Samson's behavior almost, but unfortunately his mutation wasn't able to be passed on because Scarlet shot him to death. So anyway, about Don, he kills people by brutality. He bites his wife, but that obviously doesn't turn her into a rage zombie. But he kills a bunch of people. Some of them become infected, who go on to destroy the entire base. And also he brutally kills the army lady who's saving their children. Those goddamn bastards, honestly. Those little bastards. They couldn't even wait 24 hours, probably, before sneaking off back home just because their kid doesn't have any pictures. Surely Don secured a picture, or anyway, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. I'm sure that if their kid said, please, can you go to my house and get some pictures, I think Don would agree. But maybe the military would be like, maybe, we'll see. We'll wait a minute. The infection lives when people don't. Whatever. So Don being an alpha is, it's a smart choice. It provides like an actual antagonist to the movie rather than just the zombies. There's a combination of like the group facing off zombies and also evading the military. I don't know which one's scarier. Probably zombies, because they have no real allegiance. They're just kind of a mindless, violent horde. And the military, even though they're in a car, which infected definitely don't have the capacity to drive, they still hunt them down and shoot at them with a attack helicopter. I hear animals. But what's probably the most interesting thing about Don is how his psychology is triggered. Mainly, I think the screams of women make Don angry. So his wife, the last thing that he saw of his wife while she was still alive before she came to the facility was Alice screaming, "Dawn!" And that will haunt him. Well, it haunted him. But I think the infection also makes your emotions hyper something or other. It basically makes you hyper, it makes your already existing emotions go to 20. And I think when Alice was screaming for him or someone to save him, it made him like flash back to that moment. And when you're sad, you get angry sometimes. And so his only response was to kill Alice. And I think in that way of killing Alice, he kind of alleviated his guilt about leaving her. He was incredibly guilty, but his infectious mind clouded it. It made her look like a threat, but also hearing her voice, it filled him with pain and regret. Maybe I'm just spitballing, but I think that maybe the screams of women in particular, like Scarlett in the tunnel system, she screamed for him to stop when he was biting Harry, whatever his name was. No, Andy. Yeah, Andy. Andrew, Alex, I can't remember. Ace Ventura. But anyway, so he was being bitten, and Scarlett was like, "Get off of him!" And then that made Don spin around, think of Alice again, and then Don, couldn't control himself, and obviously was going to attack Scarlett. Which I can't remember if she had heterochromia, but she wasn't infected anyway. But yeah, Don alleviated his guilt by raging out and attacking specifically his children in a violent way, and also his wife. He didn't just maul her to death. He forced his thumbs into her eye sockets and bit her and smashed her face in. So yeah, that's basically my thoughts on 28 Days Later. It's okay, but I definitely prefer the others better to 28 Weeks Later.
What are you doing, Seth? Why are you stuck in the dryer?
So, 28 years later, kind of splashed on the scene, and generally speaking, I think it was pretty good. I really liked 28 Years Later, but as you can probably tell in a minute, I'm gonna say a lot more nicer things to 28 Years Later, The Bone Temple. And anyway, before we get into that, I just want to talk about, the continuity regarding 28 weeks to 28 years. Now, some people say that, you know, I really would have wanted to see where the continuity went with the kids and Danny, the helicopter pilot, and wondered why the cockpit of the helicopter was full of blood. But the thing is, regarding that, I generally don't like the original theory that they just used nukes on Paris. I mean, it makes sense that they just didn't want anything resembling the rage virus ravaging Paris, because then it will go on to ravage the entire world. But the thing is that when it comes to the explanation that they just drove it back using traditional arms is fine enough. But in all of the time that the infected could have used the Channel, which is the underground train tunnel from England to France, I generally think it probably could have been shown a little bit more convincingly. But the thing is, we never really did get months later because, you know, the production took so long. But the thing is that, so I generally buy that they managed to push it back to England, and that England has not only stayed still, but regressed to this agrarian-style civilization. The Holy Islands, separated by the causeway, is probably the most beautiful part of 28 years later. And also, like, it represents the top action. So when Spike goes from, you know, quite timid, quite scared, and quite reluctant to shoot an arrow at an infected, to then, you know, challenging alpha zombies on his own at the end of the film, is quite a nice progression of his character. The thing is about 28 years later is that it starts at a high place, but then when it gets to the action of Spike taking his mother to see the doctor, it kind of dips down a bit and becomes a little bit boring and monotonous. But then when they meet Kelson, it then goes up to this emotional crescendo, because they made it to the doctors. You're finally going to be able to understand what's wrong with the mother. And it kind of represents almost like traditional, like ancient media type. You have the warriors, you have the journey to see the witch doctor, and the witch doctor you think is either kind of insane but also kind of really nice. And generally speaking, just like the whole vibe of it is very ancient and stuff. The one thing that probably really didn't work for me was the side character of Erik, who was the Swedish soldier who crashed onto the English shore, and then his squad got ripped apart by zombies. But so yeah, I just think that if he was going to die and just like his skull was going to be put onto the ossuary, I feel like it could have like had some sort of more emotion to it. I don't know. Here comes me, someone who doesn't make movies for a living, deciding where the story is going to go. But I think that it probably would have been a bit more of an interesting story beat to have the Erik and his crew crash onto the Holy Islands and interact with the people who are all scared about his like tactical gear, his night vision goggles, helmet and stuff. And then you have this scene where people are kind of connecting with the locals about you know, what has happened in the world and the fact that they've been left behind, technologically anyway. But it was alright, I guess. The zombie giving birth on the train scene, I have mixed feelings upon that. It obviously goes into the next part, but ultimately in the Bone Temple we never really got anything about what the baby was like or even what the dad was going through. But I'll get to the Bone Temple in just a minute. So my opinion on 28 years later, I think it sits on the tiers. It goes 28 weeks later at the bottom, 28 years later Vanilla, and then 28 years the Bone Temple, and then 28 days later in the rank of my personal preferences for that. Yeah, I mean, I don't really have much to say about 28 years later. It was really good. The emotional moment of them entering the ossuary, and then you hear the humming and the meaning. I originally thought Dr. Kelson was a priest because of his talk of the bones being an actualization. You hear that a lot in Catholicism when it talks about things that aren't really there but have meaning, kind of like metaphysical concepts. Not for any particular reason, I just thought he would just be that way. But yeah, I think Kelson is probably one of my favourite characters of the series. I don't really have any theories or observations. I'm kind of glad that they didn't go for the process of giving birth to the zombie baby made the infected woman stay infected, and that Illich shot her to death. I feel like it would have been a bit cheesy for the whole motherhood bonding thing to be more powerful than the infection itself. That's what I think, at least. I think that the baby was born, it isn't infected because of the placenta, but the mother is a zombie no matter what, and after the pain of giving birth had staggered, then she woke up again and wanted to kill the gang. What do we have here? An infected patient. Possibly a world's first, Samson. I'm Dr. Kelson. Although I feel more like Androcles removing the thorn from the lion's paw. Which means you owe me. Just kidding. I'm NHS. No charge. Although, you may be waiting a while for an appointment, and certain services that used to be free are now no longer free. But still, no initial charge. Ain't that right, Sammy boy? I'm going to trust you, YouTube. I have what you want right here. And if my video goes unwatched, then you won't get to have it. It's a transaction. A quid pro quo. Now, I'm not entirely sure you understand Latin. Oh, thank God. You too. So 28 years later, the Bone Temple, we're finally getting closer to my predictions about what's going to happen. But I just want to get this off my chest. I think it's perfect. I think it's near perfect, and I'm a little bit scared that it didn't create such a boom at the box office that the studio it didn't make $1 billion, so let's just not do it at all. I think that is an incredibly cowardly way to run the film. You've created such a wonderful, emotional piece of art like the Bone Temple, and you conclude it obviously where there's going to be Cillian Murphy again. You're sequel baiting, but then you probably just not have the sequel at all. I think that's probably going to be the most tragic thing, but hopefully Danny Boyle, or even I might check the news and put it here, but I really do hope that there is some sort of news saying that a third installment is going to be concluded. I hope that that 28 years later, the Bone Temple is going to be the last installment of the 28 years later franchise, because I really don't want there to be a 28 decades later and in the future we get some schlocky action movie about the rage virus finding its way to the Mars colony and infecting everybody there, because it's kind of like it would just be 28 weeks later but in space. You know what I mean? It's going to be a continuation of the worst installment in the franchise, in my opinion. Anyway, so let's talk about the Bone Temple. Jack O'Connell absolutely stole the show. He's an incredibly sadistic, evil villain, but somehow when he is upside down on the cross and he's crying out for his mother, I don't know why, but it just tugged at my heartstrings just a bit. even this guy is torturing people. He's skinning them alive. He wanted Spike to kill a pregnant woman and bring her unborn dead baby to him as a sign of him killing her instead of bringing her back alive. He's just a menace. And everybody, like, I saw react to the Bone Temple, so that, oh, you know, Kelly is Jimmy Inc. Kelly is such a good person for wanting to keep Spike safe and not betray Jimmy, or wanting to betray Jimmy. But the thing is that Jimmy Inc. is absolutely not a good person. Maybe she's to be trusted with Spike, but the thing is that she was only starting to get annoyed with Jimmy's leadership is because she missed Charity in the barn. Jimmy told her to go find pastures anew. Go find greener pastures and expand their search for Old Nick's Temple of Bones. And, you know, she was frustrated. She came back, found Old Nick. Well, she found Old Nick, came back, and then she was like, oh, Spike, this is what we do, you know. This is what we do. We just go around killing and disemboweling and, you know, sacrificing people to Old Nick. She was originally convinced that Ralph Fiennes' character was Old Nick, but the thing is that she wasn't. She was convinced that Old Nick was real. I mean, like, in an apocalypse situation, and you've never seen a temple of bones, a man with orange skin and dancing with alpha zombies. I can understand why she would think that was Old Nick. I don't blame her for 1 minute, because it definitely, I would have thought that he was the devil, but he turned out to be a really nice old man. Another thing is, she only started to disbelieve that Jimmy was Old Nick's favored son. She thought that he wasn't even a Sir Lord to begin with. Oh, I hear a fighter jet. Anyway, so yeah, she just wasn't at all convinced that he was a Sir Lord to begin with, and I think that, you know, she the look of disappointment in her face when she found out that Kelson was not Old Nick really confirmed in my mind that she was deep into the Kool-Aid. She just didn't like Jimmy as a leader. I feel like if someone was a bit more, maybe less sadistic and promoted infighting and these fighting games, she probably maybe would have been fine with continuing her mission to find Old Nick and basically rule the world, or whatever she knew. All still attached. Ugh. I do like the fact that, so in the trailers, me and a lot of other people thought that there was going to be some kind of showdown with the actual Satan, and obviously that wasn't the case. Satan doesn't exist in the 28 years later thing, and I'm glad that they didn't introduce any kind of supernatural elements. I know that's not like what the point of the show was. The point of the movie, the movies is just like, people think he's the devil, but he's not. But what I'm saying is, I'm glad that the show didn't, or the movie didn't legitimize Jimmy's like psychopath nature. I think that would have been incredibly detrimental to the overall message. But I know they weren't gonna, But when you saw a trailer of Ralph Fiennes looking all, devilish and stuff like that, you kind of thought that he was the devil. I think the infected have now discovered agriculture. I think the infected are starting to use machinery to grow their own food. I thought that would happen. Hey everybody, I had just almost started taking off my costume before I realised I forgot to even talk about Samson's transformation in 28 years later. In 28 years later, Samson goes over this slow journey from zombie to human, and I really like how he was depicted in 28 years later as this caveman. Army of the Dead tried to do the whole, I think 28 years later and 28 years later the Bone Temple evade the specialized infected type cliche by just how creative they depicted the alphas, not as just like super tough zombies. Well, I mean, they were super tough, but the performance, I don't know, was so genuine and terrifying when it came to their caveman like, I don't know, abilities, that I just was incredibly swallowed up by it. But the one thing I do want to talk about is not really my own. I mean, like, multiple people have pointed this out at this point, but when Samson is sat in the train yard and he's having memories, and all these other infected notice that he's wearing a loincloth, or I guess he doesn't look like a rage zombie, they start waking up, and Samson murmurs, "I don't have a ticket." When the infected, and that's when the infected go in to fight him. I really find it interesting that it, not just that he was in a train yard, but also like the memory that he had where he was infected as a kid on a train looking at a picture of the moon. Maybe the last thing someone asked him was, "Do you have your ticket?" But in a more reading between the lines sense, Samson being asked by a hallucination that turns out to be like where a zombie is standing, that Samson doesn't have a ticket, it kind of makes me think that his ticket for zombiehood was expired at that point. So yeah, the zombie crowds were asking him, "Do you have your ticket?" And Samson was like, "No, I don't have a ticket." And that's when they decided to rush him. I thought the way that he was cured necessarily, I think it's believable. I think that any virus, this isn't like the Solomon virus where it's absolutely indestructible. Even though many people have pointed out that the rage virus, if it were real, probably wouldn't be as effective at spreading so fast in 2026, because when it was in 28 years later, it was during the Blairite government. If you saw the newspapers where Jim was, it said Blair declares a shutdown or whatever. So I think, modern technology like phones and other measures would stop, and because the rate of infection is so fast, it wouldn't be able to really leave a generalized area. I think the infected would either be driven by big, like, I don't know, but since, contrivances or factors that just made them start walking and then eventually hit a town. But the thing is that, it's kind of like All of Us Are Dead, but the thing is that in All of Us Are Dead, it happens in a city, not in a small, town in Cambridge, which is big, but I think the isolation with wheat fields and other stuff, it would make setting up a perimeter a little bit easier. I think if the infection were to be as dangerous, it would need a longer incubation time, and it would need a more ways of being transmitted, like airborne. Which, I mean, being bloodborne is technically, you know, waterborne. But unless you get a droplet, it can't be carried by dust. It has to be carried directly by liquid. I kind of understand how it might be, you know, cured. I mean, it is just a Ebola virus, but it has other attributes. And also noted by other people that most infected would most likely die of dehydration after 3 days, not 5 weeks. They make a big point about the infection needing time to wait until they starve to death, but I think that if the infected were real, they would die of dehydration or the elements, or step in a hole and twist their ankles and become much less of a threat. But still, plot needs to happen, and I don't want to dive into the plot holes. I already did that with 28 Weeks Later. But yeah, Samson. I was really begging for Ian to kill Samson and just be done with him. He was a menace. He was completely terrifying. And when Ian was about to inject the euthanasia needle into his neck, definitely had me like. But since he spoke, and since Samson responded to him and fought the other infected, I generally think Samson is going to be fine. And I have a nice prediction about what will happen to Samson and the rest of the gang in my predictions for 28 Years Later Part 3, Jimmy's Rage. I don't exactly know how to dramatically end this video, so here's me dancing to Rio by Duran Duran. On a pretty view, and then I'm sure that you know it's just for you. Her name is